By a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
Mr. Greeno. Here. Mr. Haas.
Here.
Mr. Hellman.
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Russell. Mr. Schindeldecker.
Here.
Mr. Slough. Ms. Warnicki. And Mr. Wopser.
Present.
I never heard from Ms. Warnicki, so I'll leave that up to council to decide whether she should be. Oh, I'm sorry, she did send an email, but I was, okay. Mr. Slough.
I would move to excuse Ms. Warnicki.
Second, Mr. Haas. All those in favor of excusing Ms. Warnicki, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. She is excused. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to accept the previous city council meeting minutes. Mr. Slough.
I would move to accept the last session of council.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of the regular session of city council for November 16th, 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They are accepted. I also need a motion for the public hearing minutes. Mr. Slough.
I'd move to approve the minutes of the 11/16 public hearing minutes.
Second, Mr. Schindeldecker. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the November 16, 2021 public hearing minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. They are accepted. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-on replacements or removals from tonight's agenda?
We have two add-ons. We have a letter from Fire Chief Eberly concerning the fiscal year 2021 Assistance to Firefighter Grant, and also an Ordinance 2021-121 for the fiscal year 2021 Assistance to Firefighter Grant. And I would move that the letter and ordinance be added to the agenda.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of the add-on, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They are included in tonight's agenda. We have no proclamations, recognition or retire resolutions. We have no oral communications. We do have one petition.
A petition from Philip Rooney on behalf of the petitioner KGD Properties Ltd. for a vacation of the entire length of Heartland Court, lots 5, 6, 8, and 9, for the Findlay Commerce Park 4th Edition Heartland Court right-of-way.
Questions or comments? The petition will be referred to the City Planning Commission and the Planning and Zoning Committee. Reports of municipal officers and departments.
Board of Zoning Appeals minutes for October 14th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Minutes to be filed.
A letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding the airport fuel budget appropriation.
Questions or comments? Mr. Wobser.
Is Rob here? Rob, do we have enough to get us through to the 21st, or do we need to take care of this tonight?
We do have enough to get through to the next council meeting, but the next council meeting, I would prefer to have the second and third, so we have enough to get through the end of the year into the first of next year.
Very good. And real quickly, for folks that don't understand why we have to keep giving money to this budget.
So our cargo is up, so jet fuel sales are up, which is a good thing, but it is a governmental, as Auditor Stashak pointed out last time we had to do this, it is a governmental accounting practice that we have to go through, so.
So we're making money.
We are, and we're
In fact, we're making more money than we thought.
We're averaging about 4 cargo shipments a week that are coming in off hours. So
That's
this
great.
is a good thing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You got to have fuel to sell fuel. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, the letter will be filed.
Letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding the transfer of funds for tornado siren repair.
Questions or comments? Mr. Wobser?
Rob, on this one, there's no way we can increase the insurance payment back to us?
The insurance claim was filed, and that's the dollar amount that they gave us, but the timeline, it caused this expense with this supply chain to actually exceed what was budgeted,
Okay,
or what came back with the insurance claim.
all right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, letter to be filed.
Officer Shareholders Disclosure Form from the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control for Speedway LLC doing business as Speedway at 8502 at the locations, or that location at 3730 Speedway Drive for C1, C2, and D6 liquor permit, for their 1415 South Main Street location for C1, C2, and D6 permit, and then also for their location at 752 Trenton Avenue for C1 and C2 liquor permit. Check of the records show no criminal activity for those who applied.
Mr. Sloughman?
I would move no objection be filed for each of the requests.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Hellman?
I've got a question, and it's not that I'm against this, but it just seems to me like every council meeting we have, there's a request for liquor permits at gas stations. Is that a trend across the state or across the country where you can, and I mean, I know they're allowed to do that legally, but it just seems like we've had an awful lot of these requests. Is there a reason for that? Do you know?
I don't know if we can get an answer except from the police chief, and he's not here this evening.
Well,
Well, Denny, these are just renewals.
To be able to see.
I don't see that on here, but I don't buy my beer there or anything, so I don't know. I don't see that it's a renewal, but I'll take your word for it. But it just seems like there's an awful lot of them. But Mayor, you were going to comment?
Yeah, I saw Councilman Russell kind of making moves, but yes, these are the renewals. They have to go through them every so often. So these are just continuing to make sure that they're in compliance and that we don't have any criminal activity that's occurring. So these are routine renewals, which is why we've had so many.
Thank you.
Yep, you're
Mayor,
welcome.
just a quick question. Since Marathon sold the Speedway division that's now owned by 7-Eleven, would that possibly be why this would be a new applications?
No, that's not how the liquor control licenses are handled.
All right,
Thank you,
any
Mayor.
other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of nothing would be filed against the following three, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? No objection will be filed.
A letter from Council President Harrington regarding local Board of Tax Review appointment.
Questions or comments? Mr. Slough?
I would move that we confirm the appointment of Mr. Huffman and Mr. Sadowski to the board.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor that the following be appointed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Mr. Huffman and Mr. Sadowski are appointed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding the Han Greenway Trail Phase 2 PID 109009, project number 31993800.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding ODOT fiscal year 22 resurfacing Bright Road Phase 2, project number 31993800.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Let's see. City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for November 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Fire Departmental Activities Report for November 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Planning Commission Agenda for November 10th, 2021 and December 9th, 2021, as well as the minutes of October 14th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Agenda and minutes to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding various boards and commission appointments. Do you want me to go through each one? Okay. First one is Blanchard Valley Port Authority. It does require council's confirmation. Kirby Overton to fill the unexpired term of Amy Hackenberg with the term to expire June 30th, 2022.
Mr. Slough.
I would move to accept the request.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the confirmation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Kirby is confirmed.
Board of Zoning Appeals requires council's confirmation for Carrie Trombley, Blaine Wells. Their term will expire December 31st, 2025, as well as Alex Treese, alternate 1, and Brody Yingling, alternate 2. Their terms expire December 31st, 2024.
Mr. Russell.
Move for confirmation of the 4.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the confirmation, say aye. Any opposed, nay. They are confirmed.
I think you have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Slough.
I would like the record to reflect that I abstain from this vote.
So noted.
The Downtown Design Review Board that requires council's confirmation for Charles Guringer, Eric Van Retterham, Tim Miley, Heather Clow. Their term to expire December 31st, 2024.
Mr. Russell.
Move that these 4 be confirmed.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? Mr. Wobser.
Mayor, do we have any concerns with Tim being on this board, given his position with the Alliance?
No, he has already been serving on this board. The purpose of this board is to make sure that the businesses within the downtown district are continuing to meet the aesthetics and overall standards that we would like for our downtown to have. And I think it's important to have someone that is tasked with the responsibility of making sure that our downtown is vibrant, and one of their core competencies, as well as businesses and stakeholders of the community. So I believe that Tim is an appropriate fit for this position, and he did express his willingness to continue to serve, but also his willingness to not serve if I so chose, and I think that he is an asset to the board.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the confirmation, say aye. Any opposed? They are confirmed.
Hancock Regional Planning Commission requires council's confirmation for Dan Seaman and Tristan Kilgan. I don't know how you say it. Kilgallen. Term expires December 31st, 2023.
Mr. Russell.
Move that the 2 be confirmed.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the confirmation, say aye. Any opposed, nay. They are confirmed.
Revolving Loan Fund Board requires council's confirmation for Blair Lane, Joe Mayberry, Chris Keller, and Matthew Klein. Their terms to expire December 31st, 2023.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to accept the nominees.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the confirmation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They are confirmed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding various boards and commissions that do not require council's confirmation for the Airport Advisory Board, Civil Service Commission, Local Board of Tax Review, Parks and Recreation Board, and Shade Tree Commission.
Any questions or comments on any of those various board or commission appointments? Hearing none. Letter to be filed.
Letter from President of Council Harrington regarding Hancock Regional Planning Commission Board appointment. This does require council's confirmation.
Mr. Russell.
Move that Luke Seifring be confirmed.
Second, Mr. Schindeldecker. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Luke's appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. He is confirmed.
Findlay Police Departmental Activities Report for November 2021.
Questions or comments? Letter report to be filed.
A letter from Hancock Regional Planning Commission Grant Administrator Essinger regarding CDBG fair housing and administration update of agreements.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from Fire Chief Eberly regarding the fiscal year 2021 Assistance to Firefighters Grant.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Committee reports.
An ad hoc committee met on November 29th, 2021 to review council's rules of procedure for the 2022-2023 council term. We recommend to remove the parking authority if necessary from council's rules of procedure and to continue discussion on assignments with individual members.
Mr. Russell.
Move to approve the committee report.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? All those in favor of the committee report say aye. Those opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted. Legislation, we'll start with resolutions.
First reading for Resolution 22-2021, a resolution transferring funds within appropriated funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Seeing as though this is a pretty low amount, $1,000, and it's just to make us whole on this tornado siren, and the fact that it is a tornado siren, probably not operable, I would think it's in our best interest to get this thing moving. Therefore, I move that council statutory rules be suspended and Resolution 022-2021 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The rules have been suspended, and the clerk will give the resolution its second and third reading.
Resolution 22-2021, Resolution 22-2021.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Resolution 22-2021 say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 23-2021, a resolution transferring funds within appropriated funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Jeremy had mentioned a desire to have this taken care of tonight so that that part of this project can continue and get us set for 2022. Therefore, I move that council statutory rules be suspended and Resolution 023-2021 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the resolution its second and third reading.
Resolution 23-2021, Resolution 2023-2021.
Mr. Hellman.
Move for the approval of Resolution 23-2021.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the resolution 23-2021 say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
And Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 24-2021, a resolution approving the expenditures made by the Auditor's Office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of resolution 24-2021 say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 25-2021, a resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Hancock County, state of Ohio, to execute an agreement with Findlay Hope House for the Homeless Incorporated to provide fair housing services for residents of the city of Findlay beginning January 1st, 2021.
Mr. Russell.
Seeing as how this is, we're simply authorizing, and it's not a money moving around, I would move that council statutory rules be suspended. Resolution 25-2021 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hawes. All those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the resolution its second and third reading.
Resolution 25-2021, Resolution 25-2021.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of Resolution 25-2021, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
And Mr. Schindeldecker. I guess you already did, sorry.
The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2021-107, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service Safety of the City of Findlay, Ohio to extend the current contract for services provided by the combination of the Hancock County General Health District and the City of Findlay Health Department until December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Slough.
I would move for adoption of ordinance 2021-107.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2021-107, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2021-109, an ordinance repealing current Chapter 147 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, and dissolving the parking authority.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2021-109.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. Discussion. Hearing none. Oh, sorry, Mr. Wobser.
Just gonna, I know we had some questions brought up about this. Is everybody comfortable with dissolving the parking authority, given the concerns that were raised earlier?
Hearing none. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2021-109, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser,
Nay.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
and Mr. Slough.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2021-110, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-110.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2021-110, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
and Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2021-115, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or service safety director of the City of Findlay, Ohio to grant an additional 18% salary increase for the current information systems manager position, which would exceed the allotted 8% of current codified ordinance number 2020-121 of the City of Findlay, Ohio, known as a salary ordinance, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hellman.
I'll move for the adoption of ordinance 2021-115.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2021-115, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
and Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-116, an ordinance establishing job classifications, pay ranges, salary schedules, and other matters that may affect pay for all non-elected officers and employees of the City of Findlay, Ohio, and repealing ordinance 2020-121, ordinance 2021-042, ordinance 2021-068, ordinance 2021-097, and all ordinances and/or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2021-117, an ordinance authorizing the auditor to make payroll deductions for those employees who have elected to enroll in the health savings account plan, and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2021-119, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Didn't we do that?
First reading for ordinance 2021-120, an ordinance authorizing the service safety director and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for construction costs associated with the Ohio Department of Transportation fiscal year 22 resurfacing of Bright Road Phase 2, project number 31993800, appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. That's all I got.
We had an add-on.
Thank you. Thank you. First reading for ordinance 2021-121, an ordinance authorizing the service safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to file an application for the Department of Homeland Security Assistance to Firefighters Grant, along with the city of Findlay's 10% match, to replace sections of fire hose and mobile and portable radios for the Findlay Fire Department, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell?
Well, we generally don't like to suspend on add-on legislation because this is an application for a grant. It's the ability to get 90 cents on, or for get a buck on our 10-cent investment. And the application deadline is December 18th. I would move that council statutory rules be suspended and this ordinance be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Schindeldecker. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough, Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
and Mr. Haas.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-121, ordinance 2021-121.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for acceptance of ordinance number 2021-121.
Second, Mr. Russell. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2021-121, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough, Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
and Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Old business. Mr. Stashak.
Oh, no.
Good evening, everyone. Real quick, two items. One is to remind you, and I think it was brought up at a meeting roughly a month and a half ago, that at your next meeting, we will have a fiscal cleanup ordinance to make sure that we comply and comport with all the statutory laws and rules that my office has to follow up on. And that ordinance will need to pass at your next meeting. And it'll touch on a lot of different items, just to keep the books clean and keep us in order and proper for audit. And the second thing is, it's old business and it's new, your budget. We distributed the budget books tonight for the general public. We'll be working on the digital form of the budget presentation book tomorrow and should have it posted by the end of business tomorrow. The good news is, in polling your departments throughout the city, it looks like the departments are going to return approximately $2.4 million in unused funds from their budget. And add that to the current projected unappropriated balance with the ordinance for the income tax that you passed tonight, that would bring a total up to about $19.7 million as a carry forward balance for beginning next year. So it's a pretty good start. We're going to add about $26.7 million in revenue. So all in all, if you set aside all the potential retirements for this budget cycle, you will have $45 million in resources walking into next year. That is the largest amount of resources I believe this city's ever had. And a large part of that's due to the federal government and the packages they have passed and the money they pushed our way, as well as Bureau of Workers' Comp, as you all know, last year. So we're walking into a strong position as you expected, and I look forward to your meetings to see the rest of the details. Please contact me any way you like with any questions you have in reviewing the document. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Sashak? Any other old business? New business? Mr. Russell?
There will not be a P&Z meeting in December, so Denny, don't come. We're not going to be here. Or else give your wife a benefit and leave the house.
Other new business? Mr. Wobser? All right, Ms. Mayor.
All right, sounds good. Well, good evening, and thank you, Auditor, for pointing out the wonderful work that our departments have done. Certainly, we're grateful for the federal support, and we'll put those dollars to good use. But that $2.4 million that we're adding to our cash balance is due to the hard work that our employees do each and every day, and we're very proud of them. And as you look through the budget book, you'll notice that my letter to you all as we present our budget specifically calls that out. We are presenting a deficit budget, but we continue to manage our finances and adjust as we go. And one of the things we want to always do is make sure that we are operating at the level that our citizens deserve and expect, and then adjusting as we need to and trusting the expertise and management of our department heads. And I am, as we went through with our team today in preparation for next week's budget hearing, I'm excited to share with you, one, all that we accomplished this past year, but certainly the multitude of projects and plans that we have set forward for 2022. It has been a rough almost 2 years, but we are excited and very well positioned to move our city forward in very exciting ways. I want to mention a couple of things. Because it happened right after our last meeting, is that the city of Findlay and really the Maumee Watershed Conservancy District, which has been acting as kind of our leader for flood mitigation efforts in conjunction with the county and city, received $7.1 million from the federal government through the RAISE grant program. We were the only funded project in the state of Ohio through the infrastructure dollars to do improvements to the Norfolk Southern Railroad Bridge, which, as we know, poses a significant impact during flood events. And when we improve that railroad bridge, raise it, expand it, move it out of the waterway, we'll receive over a half a foot of benefit in a 100-year storm event. And one thing I want to point out, because we always reference it as that 100-year storm event, that actually is more significant in smaller events. So this is very exciting. We're grateful for all of the support, whether it be from our corporate partners calling and showing support and writing letters, from federal government, from the state representatives, state senators, local entities that really supported this effort. It was a team action, and we got it done, and I'm very excited for what that means for our community. In that same vein, you may have seen that the city of Findlay also moved forward with putting out a request for qualifications for a firm to help us in designing what amenities and benefit we can put within the benching area. So obviously on the northeast side of the Blanchard River and Main Street, we have acquired and demolished a number of projects. That area is primarily held for flood mitigation, and we'll be able to do that. But when we have that expansive space, we can also add some amenities that may, for the reporters out there, look like an amphitheater, walking paths, splash pads, a number of things compliant with the deed restrictions on those properties. But we also want to make sure that that's usable space in the heart of our downtown. So we'll be looking for a firm to assist us in kind of brainstorming what that can look like within the parameters that we have, and moving that forward. So that's very exciting as well. Boards and commissions, as you saw, we had a ton of appointments. I had a great response from the community. It was a little bit of a different way to do it, seeking individuals that wanted to serve on a board and commission. We had about 50 individuals apply, which was great, and it was really fun to reach out to those folks. Certainly not everyone could participate, which is disappointing, but I did follow up with them and share that there are other ways for them to get involved. One, keeping an eye on other boards and commissions, but certainly next up opportunity is on the community outreach team for the strategic plan. So I wanted to remind each of you that the community outreach team application is available on our website for either hard copy completion or digital completion through a Google form. That is due next Monday, December 13th. Please, please, please share that with your networks. If you are a part of church groups, Kiwanis, whatever organization it may be, please encourage folks to complete that. We want to make sure that we have a diverse representation of our community based off geography, age, demographics, gender, all of those different items, to make sure that we have all the voices in our community helping bring folks in to the process that lies ahead. So those individuals were all invited that were not able to serve on a board and commission, were invited to participate on the community outreach team. In that same vein, related to Strategic Planning Committee, Councilman Wobser, I believe we would like to have the Strategic Planning Committee meet on January 11th with planning next. They would like to have a meeting to discuss next steps. So that is a Tuesday. I believe they want to be in town to meet with a number of folks, and as part of that, meet with the Strategic Planning Committee to have a discussion. And so we would like to just kind of get a nod of heads and general impact. Councilman Russell did not look thrilled by that date. But we are hoping if we can get a majority of folks there, that would be wonderful to just kind of talk. And then they plan to then follow up with individual committee members to have discussions, and then a lot of other things. This is obviously still very kind of front end of the strategic planning process. So if I could real quick, the strategic planning committee members, if you could just kind of indicate yay or nay real quick, if January 11th would work for you. Denny, good. Tom, you're going to be rolling off, my friend. You're always still welcome. Randy, good. Okay, no. Josh, does that work for you? And if there is a specific time of day, given your, please let us. Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll probably still be afternoon. Okay, well, perfect. Well, we will be working. They have a number of things that they have asked us to kind of coordinate for them. We will do a meeting with the Strategic Planning Committee that afternoon. They'll be meeting with the various departments and another of other community organizations while they're in town. So please watch for more details on that, but thank you for kind of indicating that that will work for you. Because we had legislation, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a very long time. 3 weeks is a long time. Because we did have legislation related to damage in an accident at 237, I did want to just quick note, and hopefully Jeremy doesn't throw things at me. We are working with ODOT to actually get improvements completed at the intersection of 237 and 224. Though that is not in the city limits, that is a problem area in our community. ODOT recognizes that, and so we are partnering with them and coordinating with Blanchard Valley to do some improvements in that area. So more to follow on that, but I just want to mention that we recognize that that's a problem area, and we are doing our part to help the broader community by facilitating conversations for improvement. Yes, it could, if you use your microphone so everybody else can hear you, please.
Would that be a traffic light?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. State grant funding, we'll get more details, but the governor did announce $250 million yesterday for safety services and first responders. More to follow, but we'll certainly be applying to take advantage of those dollars here locally. You can read about it in the newspaper or on WFIN, or reach out to me if you have more questions. And then finally, today is December 7th, Remembrance Day. It is the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and 2,304 U.S. citizens were killed on that day. And so I would ask that you just join me for a moment of remembrance of those individuals whose lives were lost. Thank you. Certainly a dark day in our country's history, but Also, a time to remember how history plays a part in our future. So I believe that is all for me. It is good to see you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Webster?
I didn't have any questions, Mayor. I was just going to reiterate two things that you said, just to emphasize them. Number one, we really do need council and the rest of the folks involved with the administration to send out the link to get people involved with the application for our strategic planning communications group. It's going to play a vital role in this whole process, and right now we have 29 people that have applied, and now it's Christmas holiday, and it started on Thanksgiving, so it wasn't the most optimal time to do that. So if you all would please give this, send out to your email lists. If you have one, get it involved with your groups. If you don't have a social media page, give it to your son and or daughter who might, and have them send it out, because actually we're looking for diversity and age also. And second of all, on the January 11th meeting with Planning Next coming into town, I would extend that invitation to all of council, even though it is for Strategic Planning Committee. If anybody on council would like to attend that, they're more than welcome to come and ask questions. It should be an informative meeting to kick off the process.
So I think Councilman Hellman, he was specifically making sure that if your wife could share that with her network, that would be great on Facebook.
We'll do that. Thank you. I'd be glad to help.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hellman?
Mayor, before you leave the podium, I guess I would just like to congratulate you on your recognition that was mentioned in the paper today regarding the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, honoring you for the work that you've done in advocating for leadership and help with strengthening the communities in this country. So thank you. And it's on behalf of everybody here.
I knew you could do it. Any other new business? I've got a couple things. One, I want to remind all of council members that are for next year that you need to be sworn in prior to the first meeting of next year. The mayor has graciously agreed to swear anybody in who wants to be prior to our next council meeting on, 21st, I think that, yeah. So she can do that. If you cannot or don't want to do it with her, you'll need to make arrangements on your own to get that done elsewhere. Second is, I'd like to pass on condolences for the death of Mr. Stashak and Denise's fathers. I think, having gone through that myself years ago, that's pretty tough. So, your thoughts and prayers are for both of you. So, third, on the table in the council area, office area, there's a document that everybody needs to review. It's to check your information to make sure we have your proper email and address and phone numbers so we can contact you and pass those along to anybody else who wants to contact you. And I think the second one was concerning the meeting that I think Grant was going to attend on others' behalfs. If you wanted him to represent you, you need to fill that out also. And lastly, let's see, I knew I had 4 things. Condolences, Christmas tree, there you go. I think that's about as nice a Christmas tree as I've seen. Mayor, remind us who donated that to us and maybe some of the team that helped decorate that.
Yes, so it was donated by the Davis family right outside of Macomb, and actually my understanding is that Mrs. Davis, perhaps her father or grandfather, was actually the city auditor at one point in time. It's about 45 feet tall, the Christmas tree, of blue spruce. It was actually taller, but we had to trim it down because the base was too big for our system out there in the courtyard. There are 60,000 Christmas lights on it. And the Public Works team helps put that up. They did a wonderful job. And if you have not already watched the time-lapse video of it being brought in, decorated, and subsequently lit, I would encourage you to do so. Brent and his team put that together real quick. I said, hey, can we use our security cameras to do a time-lapse? And so they downloaded that footage and did a time lapse and added some nice little jingles to it as well. So it was a lot of fun. It was a little stressful to watch from my window, but our team enjoyed it. And actually, as well, if you have not already, this week they started, and there are now lights also up in Latham Courtyard to add a little pizzazz to downtown, given that we recognize that Santa is not making himself available in downtown Findlay this year, nor are there the carriage rides, just unfortunately with some business issues that occurred there. But there is a nice walkway through Latham Courtyard, and some Christmas lights have been put up, and Mr. Heck allowed us to decorate those trees to add some sparkle to downtown.
Mayor, go along with that, the work that the Millstream kids did on the star is amazing.
Yeah.
And I had pointed out to you right after we had
Yes,
the
you can
light
see it.
ceremony come on that I can see the star from my apartment several blocks away, which is great. And also, I think we're going to have to increase your Christmas tree ornament budget if you're going to continue to get trees this large, because the ones that we have kind of get lost on that thing.
I know.
We need some bigger bulbs and more of them.
Well noted, and thank you. I am so sorry that I forgot the topper, because they did do a wonderful job. It's actually, the diameter is 40 inches, and it only weighed about 40 pounds when they constructed it. However, they attached it to a 6-foot long steel pole for us to then fasten it to the tree. When they put it up, it weighed 200 pounds. So our team, when I was watching them try to then attach, they're up in the bucket, they have this thing dangling with ropes all tied around it, and the wind starts blowing and it's spinning. I'm like, I can't watch. They did a great job, but it was no easy task, and we are definitely reevaluating how we can decorate the Christmas tree. Maybe next year there may be twinkle lights instead of just 60,000 Christmas lights.
All you gotta do is follow the signs
put
to
it up.
Bronner's.
I'd put it up against the Rockefeller Christmas tree any day. Bring it on, New York.
Any other new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Wobser, second Mr. Slough. All those in favor of adjourn, say aye. Any opposed, nay. Sorry, Mr. Hellman, I couldn't hear you.